Initially, it appeared to be just another hectic morning at the train station. People hurried by, announcements reverberated through the halls, and children's laughter filled the air. Amid the bustling crowd, a police dog suddenly stopped in his tracks. His ears perked up and his gaze fixed on a young girl holding tightly to her mother's hand. To everyone else, she seemed perfectly ordinary. But to Rex, something was amiss. Her trembling fingers tapped a silent pattern, 5 taps repeatedly against her mother's back. No one except Rex noticed this subtle signal. Within moments, Rex broke formation, pulling his handler toward the girl. The handler tried to restrain him. "What is it, boy?" he asked, puzzled, but Rex refused to budge. What they uncovered next would send shockwaves through the entire station. Stick around until the end, because Rex's discovery will leave you utterly amazed. Before we delve deeper, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, I'm genuinely curious. Where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments below. It's always fascinating to see how far our stories reach. The morning rush at Central Station was in full swing. Footsteps echoed over the polished marble floors as voices blended into a constant rhythmic murmur. Officer Mark adjusted his cap while walking beside his canine partner, Rex, a strong, disciplined German shepherd with piercing amber eyes that missed nothing. The duo had been partners for over 5 years. Their connection strengthened through countless patrols and nerve-wracking situations that demanded both bravery and sharp instinct. What was meant to be just another routine shift was about to take an unexpected turn. Nothing out of the ordinary, just the typical throng of travelers, the familiar rumble of wheeled luggage, and announcements echoing off the lofty ceilings. Yet Mark remained vigilant, well aware that peril rarely makes a grand entrance. His experience had shown him that threats often hide in plain sight: an unattended bag, a tense expression, or a seemingly harmless motion. Then there was Rex. Unlike humans, Rex possessed an uncanny ability to detect what escaped ordinary notice. Together they moved steadily through the terminal, scanning faces and observing behaviors. Rex's steps were deliberate and silent, his police vest shimmering under the bright lights. Passengers smiled as they passed by, some even snapping photos. Mark returned a courteous nod but kept his eyes moving, balancing between composed calmness and heightened alertness. He paused momentarily near the central atrium, allowing Rex to sniff along a row of benches. The dog's tail gently wagged as his nose worked quietly. Everything appeared routine. A businessman hurried past clutching a cup of coffee. A mother comforted her crying infant while a group of tourists gathered near the ticket counter laughing. "Another quiet day, huh, pal?" Mark whispered. Rex's ears twitched at the sound. Yet his focus remained fixed on the flowing crowd. Moments later, the loudspeaker crackled to life. "Attention, passengers. Train 407 departs in 15 minutes. The crowd began to shift, moving more briskly, swelling like a rising tide. Mark straightened up and tightened his hold on Rex's leash. To an onlooker, they appeared as just another officer and his canine, a reassuring emblem of safety. However, beneath that veneer of tranquility, Mark's instincts remained finely tuned to every subtle movement around him. Rex, ever watchful, quietly surveyed the sea of people before them with intense concentration. Neither Mark nor Rex had any idea that before their shift concluded, a subtle signal from a frightened child would upend everything. As minutes passed, the crowd of travelers grew denser. The terminal hummed with vibrant energy, voices overlapping, announcements reverberating, and footsteps merging into a restless cadence. Mark carefully navigated through the throng, his eyes scanning the faces ahead, while Rex trotted alongside him, each step deliberate. The German shepherd slightly turned his head, observing those passing by, performing his usual sweep for anything out of the ordinary. Near the security checkpoint, Mark's gaze caught a woman wearing a striking blue coat, walking hand in hand with 3 children. She appeared unusually composed, moving quickly as if intent on blending into the crowd. Her youngest child, a little girl with light brown hair, lagged just behind, her small hand gripping her mother's fingers tightly. There was something in the child's movements that drew Mark's attention. The woman resembled any weary traveler, focused, carrying a large black handbag slung over her shoulder. But the little girl's eyes told a different story. They were wide and glossy, almost searching. Nervously, she glanced around, turning back with every few steps. Her lips moved ever so slightly as if attempting to speak, yet no words came forth. Rex's ears twitched. The dog slowed his pace, shifting from relaxed to alert stance. Mark immediately noticed the change. Rex never altered his behavior without cause. "What is it, boy?" he whispered. The dog remained silent, refraining from barking. Instead, he fixed his gaze intently on the woman and her children ahead. Mark followed where Rex was looking and spotted the little girl once more. She had fallen a few steps behind the rest of her family. Her tiny hand slipped slightly from her mother's grip before being quickly pulled back. Her movements were cautious, her steps uneven, far from the carefree pace typical of a child walking with loved ones. A flicker of unease stirred within Mark. He had witnessed fear like this before, a fear masked by quietness. The girl's body language suggested more than mere fatigue, it spoke of restraint. Pushing the thought aside for now, he considered that perhaps she was simply shy or intimidated by the crowd. But Rex remained unwavering in his focus. The dog's breathing was steady, his tail stiff and rigid. Mark exhaled deeply, scanning the bustling terminal once again. Unbeknownst to him, amidst the usual morning hustle and bustle, a silent plea for assistance was about to unfold. One only Rex could detect. As another train announcement reverberated through the busy terminal, people hurried by, dragging suitcases and clutching cups of coffee. Oblivious to the subtle change occurring at floor level, Rex suddenly stopped. His body tensed, ears perked upright, nostrils flared as he sniffed the surrounding air. The leash tightened. Mark looked down immediately. "What is it, boy?" he murmured, glancing ahead. Yet Rex refused to budge. His amber eyes remained fixed on a single spot, the woman wearing the blue coat and her 3 children weaving through the crowd. This was no ordinary sign of danger. There was no hint of explosives or drugs. This situation felt different, sharper, more instinctual. Rex's growl was low and nearly a whisper of caution. Mark sensed the vibration through the leash before he even heard the sound. "Easy," he murmured, narrowing his eyes. He had long since learned never to disregard Rex's instincts. The dog's actions were deliberate, never random. When Rex stopped, it always signified something was amiss. Ahead, the little girl cast a brief glance back, their eyes meeting for a fleeting moment, an almost pleading look. She quickly averted her gaze. The woman tightened her hold on the child's hand, pulling her closer as though fearful of losing her. Mark noticed the gesture, his pulse quickening. Rex's tail stiffened as he stepped forward, his breathing deepened, nostrils flaring once more. The faint tapping of his claws against the polished floor cut through the ambient noise. Mark followed Rex's gaze, watching as the family neared the ticket gates. Something about the woman's movements felt forced. Her smile at the ticket agent seemed overly rehearsed, and her posture was unnaturally stiff. The girl stumbled slightly, nearly falling, but the woman didn't pause to assist her. Instead, she tugged harder on the little hand. That single motion prompted Rex to emit a sharp, commanding bark, drawing several heads in their direction. "Rex, quiet," Mark commanded, striving to keep calm, but his dog did not obey. The German shepherd planted himself firmly, muscles taut, eyes fixed and unwavering. Onlookers around them paused, whispering softly. Mark felt a tightening sensation in his gut. Whatever Rex had detected wasn't a false alert. The dog's instincts were screaming at him. But what exactly was the source of his unease? Mark tightened his hold on the leash, scanning the crowd ahead with a watchful eye. Unbeknownst to him, Rex had already picked up on something invisible to any human nearby. The silent pulse of danger lurking just beneath the surface. The station buzzed with life, a constant swirl of people, voices, and noise. Yet to Rex, all those distractions faded into the background, his entire concentration locked onto a single target, the little girl. Every muscle in his body was on high alert. Mark could sense it through the leash, a taut vibration like an instinctual heartbeat. The woman clad in a blue coat was leading her children toward the waiting area. Her steps were quick and purposeful, her grip firm. But the youngest girl kept falling behind, her tiny fingers grazing her mother's back in a barely noticeable way amidst the crowd. Those subtle movements were lost on most, but not to Rex. 5 quick taps, a pause, then 5 more. Mark almost overlooked it, but Rex reacted instantly. The German shepherd's body stiffened, his tail rose, and he emitted a low, deliberate growl. It wasn't a sign of aggression, but a form of communication. Rex's training taught him to respond not only to scents, but also to body language and behavioral patterns. Something about those taps wasn't accidental. Mark furrowed his brow. "What do you see, buddy?" he whispered softly. Rex's gaze never wavered from the girl. Tilting his head slightly, he seemed to scrutinize each of her movements carefully. The child appeared terrified, her lips pressed tightly together, eyes shining with fear. She quickly turned her face away, pretending to fix her sweater, but trembles shook her small frame. Then it happened once more. 5 gentle taps from her hand brushed against the woman's back. This time, Mark noticed it as well. Subtle. Discreet, yet deliberate. A knot tightened in the officer's stomach. He had encountered coded signals before, silent calls for help from victims unable to speak aloud. Could this be one of those moments? Rex let out a louder growl, drawing the attention of nearby travelers. The woman flinched and quickly turned to face them. Her complexion was pale, but her smile appeared strained. "Is there an issue, officer?" she asked, her voice smooth but trembling slightly. Mark observed her closely. "Just a routine patrol," he replied, eyes shifting between her and the trembling child beside her. Rex stepped forward again, muscles tense, his instincts pulling fiercely against the leash. The atmosphere grew heavy, a quiet struggle between calm and turmoil. The girl glanced up, locking eyes with Rex for a brief instant. In that split second, an unspoken message passed between them, one only Rex could decipher. Mark's heart rate increased. This was no longer a coincidence. Something deeply wrong was unfolding, and Rex was prepared to expose it. The air in the terminal suddenly felt denser, the usual murmur of voices fading into a tense silence. Mark sensed a shift in the energy, an alert only a seasoned officer could detect, and Rex was at its core. His leash tightened once more, muscles rippling beneath his golden-black fur. His growl resonated low and deep, filling the space like a warning bell heralding an impending storm. Mark gripped the leash tighter. "Rex, heel," he whispered. But the dog stayed still. Rex's paws didn't budge from the gleaming floor as his eyes fixed intently on the woman wearing a blue coat. His ears pressed back, nostrils flared, and his body leaned forward with fierce resolve. Commands like sit, stay, and leave it, which usually directed him, now dissolved into silence. This wasn't defiance. It was raw instinct taking over. The woman froze, startled by the low growl. Her confident smile faded. "Why is your dog staring at us?" she asked hastily, trying to sound composed. "We haven't done anything," Mark replied calmly. "Ma'am, he's a trained dog. He doesn't react without cause." Around them, passing travelers slowed. Curiosity piqued. Phones discreetly rose, capturing the scene on video. A child pointed, and murmurs rippled through the crowd like a spreading wave. Mark sensed dozens of eyes upon him, waiting for his response. Yet his attention remained fixed on Rex, and the glimpse of fear he had seen in the little girl's eyes. "Rex," he murmured again, lowering his voice. "Talk to me, buddy. What do you see?" Rex shifted his gaze away from the woman and toward the girl's trembling hands. Then suddenly the dog lunged forward. Mark barely prevented himself from being pulled off balance as he tightened his grip on the leash. "Hey!" the woman snapped, stepping back quickly while pulling her children close. "Control your dog." Mark raised his free hand in a calming gesture. "Everyone." "Please stand back," he called out to the gathering crowd. The other hand hovered near his holster, a reflex rather than a threat. Rex let out a single, sharp bark that resonated powerfully against the terminal's walls. The girl flinched, instinctively covering her ears. Yet what truly captured Mark's attention wasn't the sound itself. It was her reaction. Rather than appearing scared of the dog, she seemed almost relieved. Her lips moved silently, forming 2 simple words directed at him. "Help us." Mark felt a sudden catch in his throat. Rex barked again, more urgently this time, pulling on the leash. His eyes burned with determination. This wasn't a mere reflex. He was responding to a silent plea only he could perceive. Mark's training urged him to stay composed and maintain control, but his gut told a different story. Something far deeper was unfolding, something no handbook had ever prepared him for. Taking a measured breath, Mark met Rex's gaze and murmured, All right, partner. Lead the way. Without hesitation, the dog moved forward, heading into a reality that threatened to upend everything. The terminal's usual background noise shifted into a low, uneasy murmur. Scores of inquisitive eyes watched the tense standoff between the police dog and the woman clad in a blue coat. Mark's heartbeat accelerated, but his face remained steady, the calm of someone who had navigated countless crises between chaos and order. "Ma'am," he said with a steady voice, "please stay exactly where you are." The woman stiffened, gripping the young girl's arm with mounting tension. "I don't understand," she murmured, her voice trembling just enough to seem genuine. "Why is your dog acting like this?" Rex held his position firmly, his chest rising and falling with deep, deliberate breaths. His tail was rigid, his stance aggressive, and his focus unbreakable. Mark had witnessed Rex confront armed suspects and turbulent mobs before, but he had never encountered such high alertness without any obvious cause. The young girl attempted to speak, only to be swiftly silenced by the woman. "Quiet." The command was sharp, almost reflexive, and her voice cracked slightly as she spoke. That brief instant made Mark's heart race. A mother doesn't speak like that to her child out of mere fear, unless there's something deeper beneath the surface. Mark took a deliberate step forward. "I'm going to need you to open your bag." Her eyes flicked nervously around. "What? Why?" "You have no reason." "It's routine protocol," he replied calmly, his tone firm yet controlled. "My partner sensed something unusual. We just want to clear it up." The crowd fell silent, sensing that something more serious was about to unfold. Rex's ears perked up, his body coiling with tension. The woman hesitated, gripping her bag tighter. Mark observed her hands grow pale and tremble, her knuckles whitening from the strain. "Ma'am," he said softer this time, "please." "Let's make this simple." For a moment, her facade broke. The composed smile vanished, replaced by raw anxiety. "Panic!" she muttered, adjusting her coat nervously while glancing towards the exit. Then, suddenly, she moved. In one desperate motion, she spun around, pulling the little girl along as she tried to push her way through the crowd. Gasps filled the air. Mark reacted immediately. "Rex!" he commanded. The German shepherd sprang forward, not to strike, but to intercept. With lightning speed and precision born from intense training, Rex blocked her path flawlessly. His bark reverberated throughout the terminal, causing the woman to freeze instantly. Mark sprang forward, closing the distance just enough to establish control. "Don't move," his command resonated sharply across the hall. The woman stood still, her eyes wide as realization dawned. Escape was impossible. Rex positioned himself mere inches away, growling softly, his imposing frame a symbol of unwavering loyalty and justice. Mark's heart hammered as his gaze shifted between the trembling child and the woman clutching the girl's arm tightly. Though he didn't yet grasp the full situation, he felt one undeniable truth. Rex was right. Something here was seriously amiss, and the truth was about to emerge. For a lengthy moment, everyone remained motionless. The echo of Rex's bark lingered in the air, mingling with the subdued murmur of the crowd, which now kept a respectful distance. The woman breathed sharply and unevenly, her grip on the little girl unrelenting. Mark's eyes scanned the tense scene, the shaking child, the taut leash, the crowd caught between fear and curiosity. "Ma'am," Mark said with authority, "release her hand." The woman remained rigid, her expression shifting from anger to desperation in a blink. Before she could reply, Rex advanced, his growl deepening, protective, yet focused. That growl was more than a warning. It conveyed instinct and guidance, urging Mark to look closer. The little girl turned her face just enough to meet his gaze. That brief eye contact struck Mark more profoundly than he anticipated. Her eyes weren't merely frightened. They pleaded silently wide and glistening, filled with unspoken words she couldn't voice. Her expression revealed someone caught between dread and hope. Mark bent down slightly, softening his voice. "Hey, are you all right, sweetheart?" The girl parted her lips but remained silent. She glanced briefly at the woman beside her, then back at Mark. Her tiny shoulders shook, and she clutched her stuffed animal so tightly her knuckles went pale. Rex's ears pricked forward. Now, sitting perfectly still, his eyes never left the child. His tail was rigid and his breathing shallow. Every part of him read her body language, every subtle facial cue revealing what human ears could not detect. The woman shifted nervously. "She's just frightened," she said hurriedly. "You're scaring her." Mark rose slowly, his voice calm but firm. "Then why doesn't she look at me like she's afraid of me?" The woman opened her mouth to respond but fell silent. The surrounding crowd murmured softly, sensing the mounting tension. Mark's instincts grew sharper with every moment. The girl's face told the whole story, the way her eyes flicked toward the door, the way she pressed her lips together as if to hold back tears. She was trying to communicate something. Rex let out a low, empathetic whine rather than an alarm. Mark immediately understood. The girl wasn't frightened of the officer or the dog. She was scared for her own safety. Beneath the trembling fear in her eyes was a quiet plea that only one partner could truly interpret: Rex. The heavy silence between them was nearly unbearable. The murmur of the crowd gradually dissolved into a faint backdrop as the atmosphere grew heavy with uneasiness. Mark sensed the palpable tension hanging in the air, noticeable in Rex's leash, and even in the slight trembling of the little girl's hands. The woman was the first to break the silence. "This is absurd," she snapped, her voice shaking with forced indignation. "You're frightening my children. We're just trying to catch our train." Mark remained calm, unflinching. "Ma'am, please remain calm. I simply need to understand why my canine partner is reacting this way." Rex stayed firmly by Mark's side, his eyes fixed on the woman's bag. His fur was slightly raised, not out of hostility, but from heightened alertness. His tail was rigid, his breathing measured, and his ears moved with acute sensitivity. The little girl took a small step back behind her mother, glancing at Rex once more. This time, Mark caught a subtle shake of her head, an almost imperceptible gesture that seemed to say, "Don't let her leave." "Ma'am," Mark repeated, "would you please hand over your bag for inspection?" The woman pressed her lips into a tight line. "No," she responded sharply. "You have no right." Before she could say more, Rex suddenly unleashed a deep, sharp bark that resonated throughout the hall. The abrupt noise startled nearby onlookers. A baby began to wail, and someone gasped. The woman's hand snapped instinctively, clutching her bag's strap more firmly. Mark took a step forward. "Rex, calm down," he whispered, though he knew the dog's behavior was justified. A knot tightened in Mark's stomach. This was no ordinary warning. Something was seriously amiss, something beyond what training could explain. "Please," the woman pleaded once more, her voice breaking this time. "We're late, and my children need to rest." A faint tremor ran through her hand, revealing the anxiety beneath the calm she tried to maintain. "Then a quick inspection won't be a problem," Mark responded, his tone steady yet authoritative. "It'll only take a moment." The little girl's breathing grew rapid as she tightened her grip on her toy, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Rex whined softly, shifting his gaze between the girl and the bag. Suddenly he barked louder and more sharply, demanding attention. Mark's hand moved instinctively toward the bag's zipper. The woman took a step back, shaking her head frantically. "No, please don't." That single refusal was all the confirmation Mark needed. He gestured to a nearby officer. "Security, I need backup," he called out, never taking his eyes off the woman. The crowd's murmurs swelled, phones were raised, and whispers filled the air. Rex advanced a step, his growl steady as he positioned himself protectively between Mark and the family. The woman's composure began to unravel. Her lips quivered and sweat formed on her forehead and neck. The little girl's fear slowly gave way to a quiet sense of relief. Mark's intuition screamed that the truth was within reach. Whatever secret the woman tried to conceal, the child had been trapped in that fear all along, and Rex was moments away from uncovering it. Mark's heart raced as he stepped forward. The atmosphere thickened with suspense. The crowd held its breath, every eye focused on him, on Rex, and on the trembling woman clutching her bag like a shield. "Ma'am," Mark said softly, "please put it down." She remained still, her knuckles turning white as she gripped the strap tightly. "Please," she whispered, her voice fragile now. "You don't understand. It's not what it seems." "Then prove it to me," Mark responded, his voice steady but firm. Rex growled, a deep, guttural warning rumbling from his throat. The dog's instincts were on high alert. Every muscle was tense and ready. His eyes flicked between the woman's bag and the young girl standing just behind her. The little girl's lips quivered as she clutched her toy tightly, her gaze shifting nervously from one adult to the other. Eventually, the woman's resistance faltered. Her hands shook as she gradually lowered the bag onto the inspection table. "There's nothing illegal in here," she whispered. "Please, we just want to leave." Mark gave a brief nod to one of the nearby officers, who immediately began unzipping the bag. The zipper's sound seemed painfully loud in the quiet room. Rex's body stiffened as his nose inched closer, sniffing every movement carefully. At first glance, the bag contained ordinary items: clothing, snacks, a folded blanket. But nestled between the layers, Mark noticed something unusual: a small metallic object wrapped inside a child's sweater. He frowned and carefully retrieved it. It wasn't a weapon, it was a phone, a cheap prepaid model with its back taped shut. He handed it over to the officer, who quickly examined it. "No SIM card," the officer muttered quietly. Rex let out a sharp bark, suddenly focused on the bottom compartment of the bag. Mark paused before reaching deeper inside. His hand grazed an unfamiliar, rigid object: papers. He carefully extracted them, revealing a collection of travel documents, several passports, and multiple photo IDs. Each bore a different name, yet all showed the same woman's face. Mark's jaw clenched tightly. "Ma'am," he began slowly, "care to explain this?" The woman's complexion drained of all color. "It's not what it looks like, please," she pleaded. Rex growled again, louder this time. Mark's gaze shifted downward to a small, unmarked envelope that had slipped free from the stack. Cautiously, he opened it. Inside were photographs, grainy images of children taken from far away, resembling surveillance pictures. Gasps rose sharply from the crowd. Suddenly, the woman reached out with desperation, panic flashing in her eyes. "Give those back," she cried, lunging forward. Mark instantly stepped back, holding a hand up to halt her. "That's enough," he said firmly. "Stay where you are." The young girl's voice broke softly as she whispered, "She told us we were going on vacation." A cold chill settled in Mark's stomach. He exchanged a serious glance with the officer next to him. Rex stood completely still now, silent and watchful. Both he and Mark understood the stark reality. This was no mere misunderstanding. It was the onset of something far more sinister. For a brief moment, time seemed to halt. The photographs lay spread across the table, faces of children, some smiling, others terrified, each capturing a story no one wanted to confront. The crowd's murmurs swelled, turning into a low hum of disbelief. Yet Mark's attention remained fixed firmly on the young girl. She remained still beside the woman, her large eyes sparkling with tears. She struggled to keep them from falling. Her small hands quivered as they clutched her stuffed animal tightly, as if it was the only thing that could keep her safe. "Ma'am," Mark said firmly, "I need you to move aside." The woman shook her head, panic flashing through her eyes. "You don't understand. They'll come for us if you—" Rex barked once, cutting her off. His deep, rumbling growl echoed like thunder throughout the terminal. It wasn't a sign of aggression, it was a protective warning. Mark lowered himself slightly, softening his voice as he looked at the girl. "Hey, you're safe now, all right? No one is going to harm you. I promise." At first, the girl didn't respond, her expression frozen between fear and trust. Then, slowly, she gave a slight shake of her head. "Sweetheart," Mark said gently, "what's your name?" The woman tried to interject. "She doesn't need to talk to you." But before she could make a move, Rex positioned himself in front of the child, silently shielding her. His calm, steady posture spoke volumes. The dog clearly knew who required protection. The girl hesitated, her eyes shifting from the woman to Rex. The dog's gaze softened, intelligent, patient, unwavering. That was the reassurance she needed. "My name's Lily," she finally whispered, her voice so soft Mark had to lean in closer to hear. "Hi." "Lily," Mark replied gently, "can you tell me who this woman is to you?" Lily swallowed hard, twisting the fur of her toy with her tiny fingers. Her voice trembled as she said, "She's taking us to meet our dad." Mark furrowed his brow. Us. Lily gave a slight nod, her finger weakly indicating the photographs spread across the table. Those are them, the other children. She promised we'd all be reunited, but her voice cracked, and they never returned. A cold shiver swept through the room, silencing even the whispering crowd. The woman's composure crumbled entirely. You don't understand, she sobbed, stepping forward. I had no choice. Mark abruptly raised his hand. That's enough. Rex growled softly, positioning himself protectively near Lily as two officers approached to restrain the woman. Mark glanced back at the little girl, noting the streaks of tears on her face. You did the right thing now, he whispered gently. You're safe. Lily turned to Rex, the dog who had sensed her distress before anyone else, and murmured, He heard me when no one else could. Mark's throat tightened, realizing deep down that Rex hadn't merely detected danger. He had responded to a silent plea for help. The terminal was now cordoned off, yellow security tape cutting across the hallway with uniformed officers stationed at every exit. The typical buzz of travelers was replaced by hushed conversations and flashing camera lights. What began as an ordinary patrol had escalated into a full-blown investigation. Mark lingered near the corner of the security office, peering through the glass as two detectives questioned the woman in the blue coat. Her demeanor was completely shattered. She sat slouched in the chair, her eyes empty and hands shaking. Rex rested quietly at Mark's side, still attentive, his gaze following the woman's every move through the window. A senior investigator entered the room, clutching a thick folder filled with freshly obtained records. His face was solemn. Her name isn't Emily Price, he stated plainly. The identification cards found in her bag are all counterfeit. We verified her fingerprints against records. Her actual name is Dana Voss, and she's currently listed on active watch lists in 3 different states. Mark furrowed his brow. For what reason? He asked. The man's tone lowered. Child trafficking, specifically recruiting and transporting minors. A heavy silence engulfed the room. Mark felt his stomach churn as the gravity of the situation settled on him. He glanced at Rex. The dog had sensed the danger long before anyone else. The investigator resumed. According to our files, she is part of a network that traffics children across state borders using fabricated family identities. Each time, she assumes the role of the guardian. The pattern matches perfectly. He pointed to the phone found in her bag, likely employed for encrypted one-way communication. Mark exhaled slowly, a mix of anger and disbelief churning within him. So, Lily, she wasn't her daughter, Mark murmured. Not even close, the man replied. The girl was reported missing 3 weeks ago. Her real family has been desperately searching since. Suddenly, through the glass, Dana's voice broke through, strained and frantic. I didn't want to do it, she sobbed. They forced me. If I refused, they threatened me. Her voice crumbled into tears. Mark felt no pity, only a profound, steady ache deep in his chest. He lowered his gaze to Rex, who remained poised and alert, calm yet determined. You knew, Mark whispered, running his hand gently over the dog's head. You knew she wasn't safe. Rex blinked slowly, his eyes unwavering, filled with loyalty, certainty, and resolve. The detective closed the folder with a quiet snap. You and that dog have just saved more lives than you realize, he said softly. If she had left this station, there was a chance we might never have found those children again, Mark reflected quietly, his gaze fixed on Rex. The German shepherd gave a slow, deliberate wag of his tail, a silent acknowledgement. Words were unnecessary. Rex had fulfilled his purpose. He had safeguarded the vulnerable. As darkness settled over the city, the skyline transformed into a palette of deep blues and cold steel hues. Within the police station, a palpable sense of urgency permeated the air. Phones rang incessantly. Radios emitted crackling static, and the footsteps of officers echoed against the concrete floors. The energy in the room was electric, blending determination with an undercurrent of fear. Every officer understood the gravity of the situation. Mark positioned himself near a large digital map displayed on the operations board. Red pins dotted various sites linked to Dana Voss's recent movements: train stations, motels, abandoned warehouses. At the center, a blinking light traced the GPS signal sourced from the phone discovered in her bag. It was on the move. That's another rendezvous point, the lead investigator murmured. They're relocating the rest of the kids tonight. Mark tightened his fists. Then we can't afford to delay. Rex sat loyally at his side, alert and focused on the blinking markers. His ears twitched with every noise, the subtle hum of the communication devices, the room's tension, the emotional intensity radiating from his handler. He could sense Mark's steady, prepared heartbeat in the atmosphere. "Bring in the K-9 unit," the commander commanded. "We mobilize in 5 minutes." Shortly after the convoy departed, the wail of sirens pierced the night, the flashing red and blue lights reflecting off the glass facades of nearby towers. Inside the lead vehicle, Mark's hand rested reassuringly on Rex's vest. The word police shimmered softly in the dashboard illumination. "Ready, buddy?" he whispered quietly. Rex responded with a gentle whine, not of fear, but of intense concentration. His eyes gleamed with determination. They reached an old industrial area on the town's edge, where rows of vacant warehouses lay shrouded in darkness. The signal had ceased right there. The officers spread out silently, weapons in hand, their flashlights piercing the night. Mark crouched down beside Rex, unclipping his leash. "Go find them," he murmured. Rex surged ahead, nose close to the ground, tail stiff, gliding through the shadows with clear intent. He navigated through scattered debris and broken fences, inhaling deeply, tracking an unseen scent that humans couldn't detect. Suddenly he halted, body rigid and ears perked. A low growl vibrated from deep within his throat. Mark hurried to catch up, his flashlight sweeping across a locked metal door. Behind it came faint sounds, a muted noise, the voice of a child. "Here," Mark called out. The officers hurried over. One of them pried open the door with a crowbar. The metal groaned loudly as the hinges gave way. Inside, dim light revealed a scene almost unbelievable. 5 children were huddled together, eyes wide with fear, clothes dirty, faces pale from exhaustion. Silence hung for a brief moment before a child whimpered, "Are you the police?" Mark nodded, swallowing hard. "You're safe now," he assured them. Rex approached calmly, his tail lowered as a sign of gentle reassurance. The children's fear slowly shifted to wonder. One child reached out, tentatively brushing his fur with trembling fingers. "He found us," the boy breathed. Mark smiled faintly, a glimmer of emotion shining in his eyes. "Yeah," he murmured softly. "He always manages to." Behind them, the radio crackled to life with a voice announcing, "All units, children secured." For the very first time that evening, the entire team let out a collective breath of relief. They had beaten the ticking clock. The warehouse rang with the sounds of sirens, hurried footsteps, and urgent commands as officers moved quickly to secure the perimeter. Blankets covered the rescued children as they were led to safety, accompanied by gentle reassurances. Amid the wave of relief, Mark's attention was caught by an out-of-place noise, a revving car engine. Swiftly he turned toward the back exit just in time to see headlights burst alive in the darkness. A black SUV roared down the tight service lane, tires screeching sharply. "They're escaping!" an officer yelled. Before Mark could respond, Rex lunged forward, barking fiercely, a fierce warning and a determined promise. Mark's heart pounded fiercely. "Go, Rex!" he shouted, releasing the leash. The German shepherd sprang into action, paws thudding against the soaked asphalt. The chilly night wind raced past him as his muscles coiled and stretched with each powerful stride. Ahead, the SUV swerved wildly, its taillights flickering in the dense fog. Unit 3. "Suspect vehicle heading east," Mark called into his radio, sprinting after his partner. The pounding rhythm of his boots merged with the rapid patter of Rex's paws, a relentless pursuit. The driver attempted to shake them off, whipping around a corner at excessive speed and clipping a trash bin, which crashed noisily across the alley. Rex didn't hesitate. He vaulted over the obstacle, shrinking the gap with terrifying accuracy. Inside the vehicle, the man cursed under his breath and slammed the accelerator down even harder. But Rex was swifter, a blur fueled by determination and fierce energy. "Almost there, boy. Just a bit closer," Mark murmured under his breath, sprinting at full throttle, adrenaline surging despite fatigue. Then, with a final surge of strength, Rex lunged forward, his teeth clamping down on the driver's sleeve, which was sticking out of the open window. The man yelled, jerking the steering wheel violently. The SUV skidded uncontrollably, spinning around before colliding forcefully with a chain-link fence. The engine coughed and steam hissed from beneath the hood. Seconds later, Mark arrived, gun drawn, shouting, "Police! Stay where you are!" The driver staggered out, clutching his injured arm. Rex positioned himself firmly between them, growling low, restrained, protective, relentless. Mark swiftly cuffed the suspect as reinforcements swarmed the scene. As the handcuffs snapped shut, the man spat defiantly. "You think this ends here?" "You have no idea who you're up against." Mark shot him a cold glare, tightening his hold. "Maybe not," he said, voice firm. "But we know you won't harm another child." The suspect sneered, but his bravado diminished when Rex stepped closer, eyes fixed steadily on him, the very embodiment of justice wrapped in fur and muscle. Moments later, officers hauled the man away. The flashing patrol lights illuminated Rex's calm, steady, victorious face. Mark knelt beside his partner, breathing heavily but proud. "You did it again, buddy," he whispered. Rex panted softly, tail wagging slowly. In that shadowed alley, amid the chaos, one truth stood clear. It wasn't just training that made Rex extraordinary. It was heart, and tonight, that heart had restored hope to 6 children's lives. The storm that had battered the city throughout the night had at last subsided. By the time dawn arrived, silence had settled over the streets once more. A gentle light spread along the horizon, casting a soft, pale glow that brought a subtle warmth with the new day. The warehouse district remained cordoned off, surrounded by yellow caution tape and flashing emergency lights. Yet, within the designated command center, something remarkable unfolded. Children who had been rescued sat huddled in blankets, sipping on warm cocoa offered by caring volunteers. Paramedics moved tenderly among them, checking their vital signs and murmuring words of reassurance, despite the weariness evident in the young faces. There was a flicker of hope, an unmistakable sense of safety emerging. A short distance away, Mark observed quietly as Lily, the young girl whose courage had set everything in motion, spoke gently with a social worker. Occasionally, she glanced in the direction of Mark and Rex. Though her eyes betrayed fatigue, the fear that once haunted them had faded. Rex rested at Mark's side, his fur still damp from the rain, with his head nestled between his paws. He appeared serene now, yet his gaze never left Lily's movements. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the morning calm. Mark turned to see a man and woman approaching swiftly, flanked by detectives, Lily's biological parents. Their faces were pale, overwhelmed by disbelief, until Lily spotted them. "Mom! Dad!" she exclaimed, rushing into their arms. The reunion was instantaneous, tight embraces and tears flowing freely, an unspoken moment that words could never fully express. Nearby officers discreetly looked away, some smiling softly, others battling the emotion rising in their throats. Mark let out a deep breath, his chest tightening as feelings swelled within him. Mark glanced down at Rex, who slightly raised his head with ears perked attentively. "Did you see that?" Mark whispered. "Was that you?" Suddenly, the little girl broke away from her parents and dashed toward them. She knelt beside Rex, wrapping her arms around his neck. The German shepherd remained still, his tail gently thumping against the ground. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice muffled within his fur. "You're my hero." Mark blinked rapidly to clear the sting in his eyes. He reached out, placing a hand on Rex's shoulder. "He hears that, kiddo," he said quietly. "He always does." Nearby, one of the investigators approached, clutching a thick folder. "The network is down," he said softly. "Your dog's nose and your instincts saved countless lives tonight." Mark gave a faint smile, focusing his gaze on Rex. "We simply followed where the truth led us," he replied. Rex looked up at him, eyes steady, loyal, and proud. For the first time that long night, Mark understood something profound. Sometimes heroes don't need badges or words. They just need to listen. The morning sun had fully risen, cutting through the lingering mist and bathing the city in gentle gold light. The chaos of the night had passed. In its place was a peaceful quiet, the kind of silence that follows after something deeply human has taken place. Mark sat on the police station's front steps, his uniform still damp and his body tired. but his heart was full. Beside him, Rex sat tall and watchful, his eyes scanning the parking lot where police cars idled and officers quietly shared words over steaming cups of coffee. It was finally over. The suspects had been apprehended, and the children were safe and sound. Somewhere within the police station, Lily's laughter echoed, her first genuine laugh in weeks. Mark offered a faint smile at the familiar sound. Gazing down at his partner, he spoke softly. "You know, if I hadn't trusted you back there, I might have told you to heal. Maybe even walked away." Rex turned his head slightly, his amber eyes locking with Mark's. He neither wagged his tail nor barked. Instead, he simply stared with a serene, knowing expression, something only Rex could convey. Mark chuckled quietly. "I guess that's why you're the real detective, isn't it?" The German Shepherd gently nudged Mark's arm with his nose, a simple yet profound gesture that words could never match. Moments later, a car door opened. Lily emerged alongside her parents. She paused briefly before running toward them, her pink jacket shimmering in the sunlight. Clutched in her hand was something small, the old K9 badge tag that Mark had given her before they left. She knelt beside Rex once more, smiling through tears of joy. "I'm going to keep this," she said softly, "so I never forget you." Rex blinked slowly, his ears twitching as if he truly understood. Mark's throat tightened. Placing a hand gently on Lily's shoulder, he said, "You don't have to forget. He's part of your story now, just as you're part of his." The girl embraced Rex one last time before standing and running back to her parents. Mark watched them drive away until the car vanished around the corner. The station yard fell silent once more, the only movement the breeze rustling the flag overhead. Mark glanced at Rex, his voice barely audible. "You do more than just save lives, my friend. You transform them." Rex's ears twitched, his gaze melting as he leaned in and rested his head gently against Mark's leg. As the camera slowly zoomed out, showcasing the two companions bathed in the soft glow of dawn, the narrator's voice resonated. True heroes aren't always cloaked in capes or armed with weapons. Sometimes they have paws instead of hands and hear the silent calls no one else notices. If this story touched your heart, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Each view helps us share another tale of bravery, devotion, and the extraordinary connection between people and their faithful companions.